All right. So once again, good evening to every one of y'all. And what are we going to study today? Like y'all already knew, it is about time prophecy. So what is this time prophecy? And why should we know about time prophecy? Well, there is a lot of prophecy, and there are a lot of prophecies in the Bible, and many such prophecies are time prophecies. It's related to the time and events that is foreseeing and events that is going to happen in the future when the Bible was written. And though it has already happened, there are many more time prophecies yet to be accomplished or fulfilled in our age. So we will have to understand the time prophecy. This is one of the key to knowing about the Antichrist, to know about the return of the Antichrist or the coming of the Antichrist. So unless we don't know about the time prophecy, it's really very hard for us to understand the arrival of the Antichrist and also the arrival of Jesus Christ in his second coming. So where do we start this? We will have to begin this from the book of Daniel, because that's where the introduction really happens. So we today, each of us will get a golden key. It's like a key to unlock times and prophecies. So let's make use of this key much wisely. We'll start off with the times of Daniel when King Nebuchadnezzar, we've already seen this before, but just to recollect of our memories, is King Nebuchadnezzar once on his court, he was walking during the wind of the evening breeze, and then he thinks about who's going to rule after me, what's going to happen to the kingdoms of this world, which was at that point in time Babylon. What is going to happen? Who is going to rule after me? And then while he went to his bed to fall asleep, he has a weird dream. He gets up, but he forgets the dream. So he summons all of the magicians and all the witchcraft and all the wise men, basically, in Babylon, to come in front of him and to explain or to tell him what dream he had last night, and also to give the meaning of these dreams. But none of them were able to do it. But we know that Daniel was the wisest man, and he was the God's servant, the servant of the Most High God. He goes ahead and he gives the description of the dream, not just the meaning of the dream, but he also tells the king Nebuchadnezzar why he had the dream and what is the type of dream that had occurred to him, and he gives a complete meaning to the dream. We have already seen this in a topic titled the five universal kingdom, or the fifth universal kingdom, in which he sees the golden head, and then he looks at the silver chest, and then he further looks at the bronze belly, and then iron and clay mixed with feet. He looks at iron legs, and this dream was further comprehended by Daniel later during his time in Babylon. Well, Babylon was then captured. Later during his dream, he sees kind of a four beast that comes out of the sea. Now, I want you all to remember this object or this image very very well, is because when we go to the discourse of the Antichrist, this will play a very vital role for us. I'll give you the chapters. You can make a note of it. It occurs in Daniel chapter 7. He looks at a vision. He looks at four great beasts or wild animals that comes out from the sea. And the first one is like a lion with wings. And then he looks at a bear which has about ribs in its mouth, each having not a proportionate kind of an equality, but one high and one above. And then he also looks at a leopard which has four faces, and it again has wings to fly. But the last beast, I think we've already seen these beasts, but the last beast, he is unable to explain. He says that this beast was, I don't know what name to give for this beast. It was unexplainable. And this beast that came out of the sea, it had about 10 horns. He looks at this as a vision. He had about 10 horns, and then the beast's teeth were made out of iron. And while Daniel was looking into this vision in his dream, he looks at the beast is having about 10 horns. And then he looks more further into these horns, and then he sees that three horns were plucked out from its original state, and then a small horn came forth from the place where the three horns fell away. Now, this small horn that comes out, Daniel looks into it, and then and then he sees the small horn. It had a mouth filled with blasphemy. It was able to talk like as though it is God Himself, God itself. And it just spoke, all it spoke was blasphemy, and blasphemy against the most high God. Now I want you all to remember this vision, is because when we go to the topic of Antichrist, the small horn that Daniel sees here will come back again. We will once again revisit that, but today the focus is really on the time prophecy. So I'm going to move forward now. This is the small horn that he talks about, and this appears in Daniel chapter 7 verses 25. Let's look at this. Why I'm going to tell you this is he gives a time prophecy here about the rule of Antichrist. Now everyone thinks that Antichrist will come out and he will rule for about 7 years, right? That's what we've been told, that it's 3.5 years and then another 3.5 years. In total, 7 year time period is when the Antichrist will rule this earth, and then everyone will fall to him. They will start worshipping his image, and then they will get the number of the beast, all of this. Now let's look at this. Daniel chapter 7 verses 25. This is where he opens time prophecy. He will speak. Now who will speak? He talks about this little horn. Yeah, the little horn that you see on the screen. He talks about this little horn, and he says this little horn, that is, he will speak out against the most high, that's the most high God, and wear down the saints of the highest one, which means he will just slaughter down the saints of the most high God. And he will intend to make alterations in times and in laws, which means whatever laws that God had given, he will alter that. And there will be given into, now look at this. And they, who are they? And the saints. That's what he talks about the saints in the verse above, which says he will wear down the saints of the highest one. He's talking about the same saints. He's saying, and they, that is the saints, will be given into his hand, into the hand of the horn, that is the Antichrist. Okay. Now here he brings a time. Now he's not directly saying for so many years, but instead he's saying how long will they be given? Now look at this: for a time, times and half a time, for a time, times and half a time. He's talking about time, times, that is plural, and half a time. Now, how do we understand what is time, times, and half a time? It is very easy. Time is equals to 1 year. That's how the Hebrew people calculated a year. They used to calculate it based on a time. Now if you look at modern translations of the Bible, they have already translated, the biblical translators have translated the words time into year, and times, the word time into year, and times into 2 years, because it is plural. So how long will they be given? Time, times, and half a time, which means year, 2 years, plus half a year, which comes up to how many years? 3.5 years. Now, this is what is kept. Now, this is what many people held on to from Daniel. And the same thing we read in Revelation. We see that the same kind of a statement is made by John when he says that the saints of the Most High, which is in Daniel, he talks about the same saints will be trampled underfoot for 42 months. He doesn't say time, times, and half a times, but he says 42 months, which is equal to how much? 12 months makes a year, 36 months makes 2 years, right? Time, times, and half a time. So this is a description or an illustration that happens. Now, if you're confused at any point in time, please unmute yourself and say that I didn't understand this portion, because it's a little deeper topic for discussion, but it is a very must that all of our Christians should know about this. So he says time, times, and half a times, which is a year, 2 years, and half a year, which means 3.5 year period. Now, can we take this literally, that the saints of the Most High will be trampled underfoot by this 3.5 year time period? No. Now we'll have to go a little more further, because this is a biblical calculation and a calculation of time prophecy. Dear brothers and sisters, I'll ask you one quick question. You don't have to answer this by unmuting yourself. For Jesus Christ, 1 year is equals to how many, one day is equals to how many years? We know that, right? A day is equals to 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. So for Christ, one day is equals to 1,000 year. But prophetical statement, when there are prophetical times that are mentioned in the Bible, how do we calculate it? Now, God is given a calculation method. He's given a formula on how to calculate. Now, here you look at it. Okay, so first let's understand how many days are going to be here. How many days are actually there in this time, times, and half a time. Now, in our calendar, we have 30 days, and then we have 31 days, and then again we have 30 and 31 days. But the Hebrew calendar, that is a Jewish calendar, they based their calendar off the lunar. That's a lunar calendar. It was based off the moon. So they generally had 30 days in a month. It was very minor plus and minus, which they used to adjust in a leap year. But I don't want to confuse you all too much. Let's remember they had 30 days in a calendar month. 30 days make up a month. Okay. So which means now you look at this again. Time, times, and half a time, which means 1 year is 360 days. You might want to have a pen and a paper because this is calculation again, mathematics. Please write it down. If we try to remember the numbers, we will just get lost. I mean, I got lost. I couldn't remember the numbers. So let's write this down. I'm going to give about 5 seconds. If you all don't have a pen and a paper, kindly go ahead and get it. Okay. So time, times, and half a times. Okay. We're going to recollect that. Time is 1 year, times is 2 years, and half a time is a half a year period. Okay. 30 days make up a month, 12 months, which means 30 days into 12 months is equals to 360 days. So each year is a 360-day time period. So the first year is 360 days. That is time. Time is equals to 1 year is equals to 360 days. Then you have times, which is 2 years. That is 24 months, which is again 720 days. I'm going to repeat this again. Time, times, and half a time. 1 year, 2 years, and half a year, which is 6 months, which is put together 3.5 year period, a 3.5 year period. What we are trying to do is we are breaking this down. We want to understand what is this 3.5 year period. We are breaking this down. Now, how do we break this down? Is here it is mentioned as years. We will have to take it as days. Let's convert it into days. Okay. 30, that is 1 month, which is 30 days into 12 for a year, 12 months is 360 days. That is 1 year. When you make it as 2 years, just 360 days into 2, you get 720 days. So 2 years is equals to 720 days. Then how about for 6 months? 6 months is 180 days. So you combine them all together. You sum up the number 360 plus 720 plus 180, you will get 1260 days, which is precisely what is mentioned in the book of Revelation as to the time of the Antichrist. It will say it is 1260 days. And this is not in Revelation, this is in Daniel. But in Revelation, he gives the days. He says it's 1260 days. So which means we are on the right path, right? Right? Now now let's move a little more further. The little further is the key to understanding time prophecy. With Jesus Christ, one day is as 1,000 years. But in prophetical language, how do we calculate one day? Does it mean 360 days? Does it mean three? We'll have to calculate it by like 1 day is equals to 1,000 years, 360, it's 1,260 days into 1,000. No, no, no. Let's go ask God, I didn't understand this. Please help me. How do I find this out? So God gives a very great formula for this. What he does is, we'll begin with a question. We know that the Egyptian we know when the Hebrew people who came out of the land of Egypt, they were in the wilderness for about 40 years, right? They were roaming in the wilderness for 40 years. Now, why did God make them roam in the wilderness for 40 years? Why not 41? Why not 39? There should be some explanation to it, and that should be meaningful, and that should be true. It should be the truth. Why did God make 40 years? Why did he add on 40 years? It's because, I'll give you the verse, but I'll explain this first to you. It's because Moses, he calls out the spies. He calls out the spies from every tribe that are settled, that are then settled in the wilderness. There are 12 tribes, so he calls out elders from the 12 tribes. And then he appoints, not elders actually, but young people who can actually go and take spies. So and then he appoints one member from each tribe. That's how Joshua and Caleb, all of them come. So 12 people, they go to the land of Canaan to spy the entire land and to see how the land is and how they can go and defeat the Canaanites. Now, when after their period of spy, after they have spied the land, they return back to Moses. Now, when they return back to Moses, out of the 12 spies, 10 of them 10 of them, they give a false news. They say that we've seen Nephilims. Now, Nephilims, they came in the book of Genesis. God destroyed them during the time of Noah. The flood was caused, and they're dead, the giants. Now, these 10 tribes, or the 10 people from the 10 tribes who went in, they come and they stir up fear among the hearts of the entire people of the Israelites. All of them are worried. They all say, oh no, we are not going to go and fight against the Canaanites, is because the 10 people who spied, they have told us that there are Nephilims over there. We are not going to fight. Then Moses asks Joshua and Caleb. Joshua and Caleb, they bring out pomegranates, they bring out grapes, they bring out good fruits, very, very good fruits. And they say, this is the land that God has promised, and God has given us victory. Let us go and capture the land. But the entire Israelites, that is the Jewish people who came from the Egypt, they said, no, we will not go. You know what God did for that? He said, because the spies went and spied. You know how many days they spied in the land of Canaan? They spied for about 40 days. 40 days. Now, God says, because you spied for 40 days and you came back and you gave a wrong report, I will add a punishment to y'all, which is one day is equals to 1 year. He says, because of 40 days, I am going to make it as 40 years for you. Let's read from Numbers chapter 14, verses 34. I will read it for you all. Look at this. For 40 years, 1 year for one each of the 40 days. You've spied for 40 days. So each day, I'm going to make it as 1 year for you all. Because of 40 days, I will make it as 40 years for you all to roam around the wilderness, which means in prophetical, God is taking as 1 day as 1 year. And this is not the only place he has done this. He has also done this to Ezekiel. Now, he calls Ezekiel and he says, Ezekiel, um, if you're looking at me, you can observe this. The land of Israel, it is divided into two. We have the northern territory of the Israel, where you have the 10 tribes stationed or living. And then you have the southern region, where you have the two tribes, which is the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. And the two tribes were always addressed as the kingdom of Judah. And whenever God says Israel, that is after the period of Solomon, it is not referred to the entire nation of Israel. It's referred to the 10 tribes. Right now, look at this. In Ezekiel, God calls Ezekiel, and God says to Ezekiel, Ezekiel, there are the tribe of the Israelites, that is the 10 tribes. They have sinned greatly against me. They have sinned a lot, and I will have to punish them for 390 years. That's how many years that I'm going to punish them. But I would like to forgive them. I want to forgive them. But if I want to forgive them, Ezekiel, you will need to do something that will make me forgive them. There's an alternative arrangement he does. What he does is he calls Ezekiel and he says, Ezekiel, you go ahead and lie down on your left side. On your left side, go to your bed and sleep on your left side for 390 days. 390 days. Just sleep on one side. Don't turn over to the other side. If you sleep for 390 days, I will forgive the sins of the Israelites for 390 years. Watching this? He says, if you lie down for 390 days, I will forgive the sins of 390 years. So he's making a day for a year. And then he says, you turn on the other side now, that's on your right side, and you sleep for 40 days. If you sleep for 40 days, I will forgive the sins of Judah, that is the tribe of Judah, Judah and Benjamin, the southern territory, for 40 years. The 40 years sin period that they had done, I will forgive it. All you have to do is lie down on your right side for 40 days. Now look at this. This is the biblical verse. Ezekiel chapter 4. I will read verses 5 onwards. He says, for I have laid upon thee, look at this, for I have laid upon thee the years of their iniquity, according to the number of days, 390 days, so shalt thou bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. And when thou hast accomplished them, lie again on the right side, and thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. Now look at the next line itself. I have appointed thee day for a year, which means a day is calculated as a year. And that is the key, dear brothers and sisters. Whenever we are understanding time prophecy, we will need to use this key. The key is one day for Jesus Christ is 1,000 years. But when we're looking at prophecy, one day is equals to 1 year. That's how you'll need to convert it. So let's go back. If he says it's going to be 1,260 days, it is actually 1,260 years, a period given to the Antichrist. We will look into that very detail, not today though. But let's first validate. Let's validate if this time prophecy or if this key that we have now got it, that is one day is equals to 1 year, if it is actually valid. How do we validate? We just can't go by this just because God said one day is 1 year. We cannot start taking everything as one day as 1 year. We need proper evidence to prove that, right? So we look at one such evidence from the Bible, and this is directly related to Jesus Christ. Now, just before we go into that, I would like to remind you all to go into the book of Revelation. Now, if you want to study Daniel, we'll have to go in a reverse order. We'll have to go first to the book of Daniel and then the book of Revelation and then come back to the book of Daniel. Now, how the book of Revelation was given or to whom it was given is it's actually a book of God. The Revelation book it didn't belong to Jesus Christ. That's why if you read Revelation chapter 1 verses 1, it says this is the revelation from Jesus Christ which God gave him. Many people, why they're not able to go into revelation is because they believe that Jesus is God and God is Jesus. They believe the Son is the Father and the Father is the Son. They believe Trinity. But the minute you start reading Revelation, it's all broken into pieces. Now, it brings us first God. The revelation belonged to God. He gave it to Jesus, and Jesus gave it to an angel, and the angel came forth to John. And it did not give it to John, it showed to John. I don't know how, but it is somehow like how we use technology today with big wide screens. 2000 years back, the angel has showed the vision to John, and John has seen it literally. Now, this is how Revelation begins. Why we are going into Revelation is because the book of Daniel, after the book of Daniel was written, after the 12 chapters were written, God calls Daniel and says, Daniel, seal this book until the time of the end. Don't open this book. Let this book be sealed. Now, in Revelation, we see Jesus Christ opening this seal. It starts with Revelation chapter 5. Again, chapter 5 breaks Trinity. Revelation chapter 5. It's because it brings Jesus Christ and it says this is a vision in the heaven. I'll give you a very short note, but I can read each of this. It's just taking more time. So Revelation chapter 5, kindly read it at your homes. What happens is John is just looking at a vision, and John sees a scroll, and the scroll is sealed. No one is able to open the seal. It's just sealed. And John cries. He says, "Is there not a single person who's worthy enough to open the seals and read it?" Then the angel among John says, "Don't cry. There is a person, there is a lion, a tribe of Judah who has won the victory." It's talking about Jesus. He is the one who will open the seal. Now, then Jesus starts coming in. And when Jesus comes, Jesus looks at a throne. There is a throne, and on the throne, there is God sitting on the throne. And God places his right hand, and Jesus receives the scroll. If God is Jesus and Jesus is God in heaven, how can here in Revelation chapter 5 show a distinct being? It's showing God sitting on the throne and Jesus standing before the throne and receiving the seals, the scroll. And now watch this. What happens is Jesus breaks the seal and he reads from the scroll. Jesus breaks the seal and he reads from the scroll. Now, what is the seal that he reads? And if it is sealed, because if he's breaking the seal from the scroll, it should have sealed before, right? You're able to follow me, dear brothers and sisters. If Jesus is breaking the seal, that means the scroll had to be sealed. Now, when was the scroll sealed? Look at Daniel chapter 12, verses 9. He says, "And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed till the time of the end." And Jesus opens only at the time of the end. And this was sealed way back in Daniel. And one of the prophecies from the book of Daniel is what we are going to open today. We're going to open one of the seals and apply the time prophecy for that particular seal. You with me on this? I'm going to give you about two few seconds. If you have any doubts so far, dear brothers and sisters, now is the time. No? Okay. So let's go into the book of Daniel. Now, the book of Daniel, would it amaze all of us? Because it amazed me when I first read and understood and also heard that the book of Daniel contained the second coming of Jesus Christ in chapter 12. Well, when I heard this, I asked this question. Jesus says that no one knows that hour except the Father in heaven. Yes, very true. In fact, when Jesus was on this earth, he did not even know that he will be forsaken by his Father. Finally, on the cross, he says, "Lord, Lord, why have you forsaken me?" He didn't know until then. There are many things that Christ didn't know in his first coming. But then, when he went to heaven and when he opened up the scroll, he knew everything. Everything is open and plain before him. There was nothing hidden. That is what is called as the right hand of the Father. Everything was open, including his second coming. Jesus knew. Jesus knows when he is going to come because he opens up the scroll. And that is referred in the book of Daniel. Now, what we will see today is we will look at the first coming of Jesus Christ. We'll see how did God tell Daniel when Jesus Christ will come? Not the second coming, dear brothers, the first coming. That's what we are going to check. So the key that we have got today is one day is 1 year, prophetical year. One day is 1 year. And we have reference to it. We've seen it from the book of Numbers, and we've also seen it from the book of Ezekiel, right? So keeping this in mind, we'll go again. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar, he picks up all of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. That's the Judah kingdom. He brings them into Babylon and he puts them into slavery. They go into slavery, the kingdom of Babylon. They go into for about 70 years. 70 years is the period of desolation, it's called as. They go into desolation. They go into captivity. Now, Daniel, he starts praying to God. He says, "Oh God, how long are you going to keep us in this captivity? Enough, Lord, enough. Kindly release us. Kindly let us go." But the way he prays is he prays as though he has sinned. He says he prays on behalf of the people and confessing their sins, asking God, "God, when are we going to get delivered from this captivity?" God never answers that, but instead, God gives a different answer to him. God says, "Daniel, you're asking about captivity release, but I will give you a different answer." Now, this is recorded in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verses 20 onwards. I will read few verses. Please follow with me. Verses 20. Daniel says, I went on praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people, pleading with the Lord my God of Jerusalem, his holy city, that he may grant me mercy and forgive my sins and cleanse me from my iniquities. Now, of the vision. Now, look at this. This
Recording in
vision of
progress.
Daniel. Please make a note of it. Some point in the future, we will reference it back. I will only say the 70-week prophecy. You should read it chapter 24, verse 24. Watch this very carefully because it's very confusing, but we'll try not to be confused. Verse 24, a period of 70 weeks. Now, what Daniel is praying about is Daniel is praying, oh Lord, when will my people and ourselves go back to Jerusalem? Now, God sends Gabriel not to answer Daniel's prayer of when we will go back to Jerusalem, but instead, the angel Gabriel is coming and giving Daniel a vision of when Jesus Christ will come. It's a total different answer. Look at this. A period of 70 weeks has been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the rebellion and put an end to sin. So there is something. There is 70 weeks, it seems. At the end of 70 weeks, there will be an end to sin. Right? Write down or mark these down. At the end of 70 weeks, there will be an end to sin to atone for their guilt, which means atonement is going to happen to atone for their sin. We know what is atonement, right? Atonement is like what you call as ransom. You atone for your sin, which means there is a sinful nature. You replace your sin with another being. That is what happened in the Old Testament. It was called as the atonement day sacrifice. And Jesus also came as an atonement sin. Now he's using the same words here to atone for their guilt, to bring an everlasting righteousness. Now, everlasting righteousness will only come through an everlasting Prince of Peace, which is Jesus Christ. Now, all of these words are referenced here to bring everlasting righteousness, to confirm the prophetic vision. Now, look at this, and to anoint the most holy one. Now, who's the holy one? It's Christ. Now, the next verse. Now, listen and understand. Now he's splitting. Now this is where the tricky part gets into. First he says there's Daniel prays, Daniel says, oh Lord, when are we going to go back to our people? When are we going to go back to Jerusalem? Now Gabriel comes and says, Gabriel, hold on. The minute you started to pray, Daniel, God has commanded me to give you an answer. Now understand the meaning of the vision. And he says, first he says 70 weeks. 70 weeks will have to pass, Daniel. When 70 weeks are going to pass, during the 70-week time, there will be atonement for sin. And atonement will happen. A righteousness, everlasting righteousness will come. And then, now after saying this, Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, he's splitting the 70 weeks into two divisions. He's splitting now. Verse 25. Now listen and understand. He's also telling us, listen and understand. 70 weeks plus, he's saying 7 weeks plus 62 weeks will pass. 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. How much is it? 62 plus 7 or 7 plus 62. Take it anyways. It is 69 weeks. So he's saying, first he's saying 70 weeks and then he says 69 weeks. That is what 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. So it's 69 weeks will pass. Look at this. 69 weeks will pass from the time the command is given to rebuild Jerusalem until a ruler, watch these words very carefully, dear brothers, until a ruler, the anointed one, the Messiah, comes. Jerusalem will be rebuilt with cities and strong defense. Did you understand so far? I will try to we'll go over this once again. Gabriel comes to Daniel. Daniel is praying, "Oh Lord, when are we going to go back to our land?" Gabriel says, "God has given me a different answer, Daniel. Now listen to this. On you and on your people, 70 weeks will pass. 70 weeks will pass." And then he splits that. And he says, 7 weeks plus 62 weeks, which means 69 weeks will pass for the anointed Messiah to come. Which means from there is some calculation. He's saying there will be 69 weeks that will pass, and when 69 weeks have passed, Messiah will be there. The anointed one will be there. And then Gabriel itself gives a calculation. Gabriel itself says, when do you want to start the calculation? How? Because if you want to start something, you need a start time, right? He gives that option. He says, look at this. Again, the same verse 25, that 69 weeks will pass from the time the command is given to rebuild Jerusalem, which means 69 weeks, the counting will start only when the command is given to rebuild Jerusalem. So, whenever the command is given to rebuild Jerusalem, Daniel, remember from that time onwards, 69 weeks will pass and Messiah will be there. He will put an end to sin. So, he's talking about the first coming of Jesus. The first coming of Jesus, dear brothers, was prophesied exactly with the year. Now let's look at this little more deeply. Now we understood this, right? So far we've understood. I'm not going to go a little more further because there is one more week remaining. It's a 70-week prophecy. We're only seeing 69. There's one more week. I'll reiterate. That is, Gabriel is saying 70 weeks, and then Gabriel starts to split. Gabriel says 62 weeks plus 7 weeks will pass. That is, 69 weeks will pass for the Messiah to come. And then Gabriel himself says, when should you start the calculation? The time or the year when the decree to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, because King Nebuchadnezzar has already destroyed the Jerusalem temple. From the time the decree is given, you start the counting. From the time the decree is given, 69 weeks will pass and Messiah will be there. So, this is what we need to first identify, an evidence for us that our key that we had obtained, that is 1 day is equals to 1 year, actually works. We need to put that into test. Now let's go here. Okay, I'm gonna recollect this again for y'all. That is 7 days. He's talking about 70-week prophecy, 70-week prophecy, which means 1 week has 7 days, 7 days in a week. 70 weeks means 490 days. You understand that, right? 490 days. How are we converting? 1 day is equals to 1 year, which means 490 years will pass for whom to come? For the Messiah to come. Or the 70-week prophecy. Not the Messiah to come, but the 70-week prophecy. Confused? We'll reiterate again. The 70-week prophecy, like we did before, we are converting 1 day as 1 year. Why we are doing this is because God has done this before. He has done this before to the Israelites in the wilderness. 40 days, he has turned it into 40 years. He has called Ezekiel and he has done it to Ezekiel. He has converted 390 days to 390 years. And then again, he has converted 40 days to 40 years, right? So if this is clear, now let's look at this one more time. It's a 70-week prophecy. Each week has 7 days. 7 days make up a week, right? So if it is 70 weeks, how many days does it have? 490 days. And we are based on our formula, on the key, we are converting the 490 days and we are taking it as 1 day as 1 year. 490 days is as 490 years. So just keep this. Now, when should Daniel start to calculate? Daniel should start to calculate the time or the year when the decree to rebuild the Jerusalem temple is given. Now, when was the decree given? It was never given during the period of Daniel. Daniel also stayed. Daniel also passed away, which means Daniel just died away. Until Daniel was alive, the decree was never given. This prophecy was not intended for Daniel, it is actually intended for us to understand. So Daniel lived his life. He went into the after the Babylon Empire. The next empire was the Medes and the Persians. Daniel he breathed his last during the Medo-Persians or the Medes and the Persian Empire. Now after that, during the Medo-Persian Empire itself, there was a great person who comes in the Bible. His name was called Nehemiah. You might have read his book. There is a book called Nehemiah as well. Now, during the time of Nehemiah, right? Nehemiah was a Hebrew person. He was born Jew, and he lived during the period of the Persians. He lived during the period what is called as an Artaxerxes. He lived during the period of the Xerxes, the Artaxerxes, one of Persia. It's the Persian Empire. Now, Nehemiah's role in the Persian Empire, he was a cupbearer. A cupbearer, he was a very close associate with the king. A cupbearer was like very much like a friend of a king, because any food that comes to the king's table will have to be first tested by the cupbearer to make sure that the food is free of any poison. A plot to assassinate the king. He has to ensure, and after he has consumed the food and he is alive, it is then served to the king. He was a very trustworthy Hebrew in the king's chamber. Who Nehemiah and this king Artaxerxes. This Artaxerxes was a very ruthless king, a discussion for another day. Now there was this one particular day when King Artaxerxes, he calls all of his ministers and he throws a great party to everyone. It's a day of celebration and a day of joy, and then everyone is celebrating and everyone is like drinking, and they're all eating, and they're celebrating. But when the king looks at Nehemiah, Nehemiah is kind of weeping. He's very sorrowful. He's weeping. So then the king walks to Nehemiah and he calls forth Nehemiah and he asks him, "What is bothering you? Why are you why are you weeping? It's a day of joy." Then Nehemiah says, this is recorded in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. Then Nehemiah says, "My ancestors' land, that is Jerusalem, is completely into ruins. It's ruins. When my ancestors' land is into ruins, how can I be happy here? I cannot be happy here." Then the king was very shattered with the words of Nehemiah. And then the king calls Nehemiah, he asks, "What do you want? You want to go and rebuild the temple." Now look at this. This is what Daniel said. The Gabriel said to Daniel, "The time when the decree to rebuild the temple is given, your counting should start." Now, this king, this is in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 18, and again Nehemiah chapter 5, verses 14. Now, this king, King Artaxerxes, he calls Nehemiah and he gives the decree to Nehemiah. And he says, "Nehemiah, you can go and build your city." He gives 12 years of paid holidays, not just 1 day, 2 day, 12 years of paid holidays, all supplies, all raw materials, and then he appoints governors, and then he appoints people. When he goes and rebuilds the temple, he needs people, he needs manpower. He appoints manpower and he sends them to rebuild the temple. Why are we looking into this? Because the book of Daniel, chapter 9, Gabriel says, "From the time the decree is sent, your counting should start." Now, how is he dividing 70 weeks? Is what he said. And then he breaks the 70 weeks and he says 69 weeks. And then he says, when 69 weeks have passed, when 69 weeks have passed, the Messiah will be here. The anointed one will be here when 69 weeks have passed. 62 plus 7. That's how he calculates. 62 plus 7 is 69. And when should the calculation should start? It should start from the time the decree is given. Now, when is the decree given? Just before we go to the decree, let's do another calculation again. We saw the 70 weeks, right? 70 weeks is equals to 490 days, makes up 70 weeks. Now, 69 weeks, because Gabriel says 69 weeks, right? He says 69 weeks. Do you want me to read that again? Daniel chapter 9, verses 25. He says, now listen and understand. 7 weeks plus 62 weeks will pass from the time the command is given to rebuild the temple until the ruler, the Messiah, is anointed. He comes to Jerusalem. And then he gives a lot of things about the Messiah, what will happen, all of that will happen. We'll go to the next verse a little further. Now he's saying 69 weeks will pass for the Messiah to come. And when you should start the counting, you should start the calculation from the time the decree is sent to rebuild. Now let's look at the formula again. 69 weeks, which means 1 week has 7 days. 69 weeks has 483 days. And according to time prophecy, we are calculating 1 day as 1 year, which means 483 days is converted into 483 years. Okay, so far so clear. Now let's start the calculation. Now let's start the counting. When did he say the counting should start? From the time the announcement is made, you should start the counting. Now, how many years will go from the time the announcement is made? Go back to this calculation. 69 weeks, which is 483 days. Convert 1 day into 1 year, because God did that, and we're using the same method, not ours. 483 days converted as 483 years. And when should it start? It should start from the time the decree is given. So if we get to know the decree when it was given, and if we put 483 years from there, the Messiah should be standing. Now let's count. Shall we count? Now, how do we know which year was the decree given? Is it given in the book of Nehemiah? No, the year is not given. But God has given us a lot of reference points to go back and see when the decree was given. Now, there is the two famous historians that every biblical scholars today base their understanding on. One is called Herodotus, who is the father of historians. And then we have another Jewish based historian who's also called as Josephus. Now, the years that they had given long, long before, not just now, they lived during the time when Israel was there 2000 years ago. The time that they mention that the decree was given is 454 BC. 454 BC was when the decree was given to whom? By Artaxerxes to Nehemiah, saying, go and rebuild the temple. Go and rebuild the temple. The year was 454 BC, which was 454 years before Jesus Christ was born. How do we know that this was accurate? Well, today's historians, they can only date back their years, which means the record till the first Olympics. The first Olympics that was held somewhere around 700 BC. That is how much they are able to trace the calendar years to. They are not able to date back further. They can all say it's been millions of years. With proof, no one is able to date back. They're able to date back only till the first Olympics. That's about 700 BC. And all of their records agree that King Artaxerxes, he gave the decree to rebuild Jerusalem in 454 BC, 454 BC. Now go back to your time prophecy. 69 weeks. How many days? 483 days. Convert 1 day as 1 year, which is 483 years. When should the counting start? The counting should start from the time the decree is given. Now, counting BC and AD is a little tricky, dear brothers and sisters. I'll just show this to you all. It'll be easy. When you're counting BC, BC will always go, it'll start subtracting itself. An example is today is 2022, right? The year is 2022. The next year will be 2023, right? But if you are living in the time of BC, it will not go like that. It will go in reverse order. If today, if this year is 2022, the next year will be 2021. That is what BC 2, BC 100, BC 99, BC 98. It'll go in reverse calculation. And when it comes to AD, it goes in a addition calculation. if now it's 2022, the next year will be 2023. The year after that will be 2024. But if we are living during the time of BC, if now it is 2022, the next year will be 2021, then 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017. That's how BC will be dated. So that is clear, right? Now let's go back again. It involves a lot of mathematical calculation, but I hope that you all know this. Okay, so 454 BC is when when the decree was given by King Arthur Xerxes to Nehemiah to go rebuild the temple. And what Gabriel said 69 weeks will pass. When you start the calculation, when 69 weeks pass, Messiah will be there. Now let's start the calculation. 69 weeks means how many days? 483 days. We are converting one day into 1 year as time prophecy. Because it's BC, we will need to subtract. We will need to minus. We will need to less. We will need to subtract the number. Yeah, now here it is. 483. How did we get 483? Because Gabriel said 483. It's 483 days. We are converting into years. 483 minus 454. What is this 454? It is the year when King Arthur Xerxes gives the decree to Nehemiah saying, go build the temple. This is the time that Gabriel said, start the calculation. If we minus 483 minus 454, it is showing us 29. What is 29? Gabriel said, when the 69 weeks have passed, Messiah will be there. Exactly AD 29. AD 29. Jesus became the Messiah in the Jordan River. He was getting baptized. And the year when he was getting baptized was AD 29. Very accuracy of time prophecy, very much accurate. So wherever God is showing us time prophecies, we will need to take 1 day as 1 year. Why are we looking into this and confirming time prophecy? Is because only if we know time prophecy, we will be able to know the rule of Antichrist. But if you see, the prophecy is 70-week prophecy. We've only seen 69 weeks. There's one more week remaining, which means how many years remaining? One more week remaining. 121 years are remaining. Now that is fulfilled in the next verse of Daniel chapter 9. I'll read this again. After the period of 69 weeks have gone, that is what he says. After the period of 69 weeks have ended, the anointed one, watch this, the anointed one will be killed in the middle of the week. Well, it's something that we are not able to understand, right? You will be able to understand now. This is verse 26. Gabriel says, when 69 weeks have passed, Messiah will be there. The anointed one will be there. 69 weeks passed, Jesus is exactly there in the Jordan River, AD 29, being baptized as the Messiah. And then he says, after the 69 weeks have passed, next he says, the anointed one will be killed. Yeah, Jesus will be killed, sacrificed. But he is also saying when he'll be sacrificed. In the middle of the week, the center of the week. Center of the week. What is center of the week? 1 week has 7 days. Center of the week is 3.5 days. That is why Jesus on this earth preached for 3.5 years and then he was crucified. Accurately. God has given this, not us. Very much accurately, he's exactly said what will happen. That is why after the baptism of Jesus, he preached for 3.5 years. After the end of 3.5 years, he was crucified. And that is exactly what Daniel is saying here. After the 69 weeks, one more week is there. When the middle of the week, which is 3.5 days, 3.5 years, the middle of the week, Messiah will be killed. The anointed one will be killed. Exactly at 3.5 years, when he served his purpose, when Jesus was about 33 years old, he gave his life as a ransom sacrifice. Now, all of this is mentioned in time prophecy. And why are we looking into this today? Why should we know about this? And he also talks about another 3.5 years. That is a stoning of Stephen, the time period allotted to the Jews. After Stephen's stoning was done, the Gentiles' times have started. So he completes the 70 weeks over there. But, dear brothers and sisters, why are we looking into this? Because when we started our lesson today, we saw the time of the Antichrist. It said time, times, and half a time, which is 1260 days. Many people today think the rule of the Antichrist is only for 7 years. But here it's talking about 1260 days, and days will have to be calculated as years. And there is a time when to start it. From the coming week onwards, slowly, slowly, we will be moving into Antichrist. We will identify if the Antichrist has already come or not. If he has already come, when did he come? If he has not come, when is he going to come? If he has already come, as his rule ended or still continuing? If he is yet to come, then when will his rule end? What is this little season that the book of Revelation talks about? Because it talks about the Satan being loosed for a little season. And will Antichrist rule the entire nation? What is going to happen? How can we escape the coming madness? All of this is mentioned in the book of Daniel again, the book of Thessalonians, and the book of Revelation, and various other prophetical books. For us to understand the Antichrist and the second coming of Jesus Christ, we will need this time prophecy to unlock all times and seasons and get into each of these rooms to get the treasure. May God bless us all, and may we keep this treasure, that is the key that we have received today, to unlock and open much more time prophecies ahead of us. May God bless us for giving us this wonderful truth on this day amongst the midst of all of his body members, and may we use it to know the coming of our Master's day. Amen.